I was gonna say this has been home for you. Even when you
Yeah.
got drafted into the NFL, you still managed to find your way back here.
Yeah. I had once I was allowed to kind of live in both places after I've established myself, I had a house down here. So as soon as the season was over, I would come down here, and I'd commute back and forth through the off season.
Okay, so
Yeah.
fair to say that in some way, shape, or form, you've been here since 90, 89, 89, 90?
88 was when I
Okay.
graduated high school. So
Okay.
since 88.
Okay. Make you feel old. Born in 87.
There you go.
So it's a long time, right? So I now I know. Now I really know.
But the story is, the rest of the story is, my mother it was a what they call now executive assistant. Back in the day, they were known as secretaries. Okay, so she worked for an investment banker, kind of a capital advisor guy that basically had money and was using his money to make more money. Capital investment firm, and across the hall was a group of investors that was run by Dick Vermeil's brother. So Dick Vermeil used to come in all the time. They were kind of in the same building. My mom used to talk to Dick Vermeil. They would chat, whatever.
So Vermeil's still coaching Philly right now.
He was not. What was the 88? No, he was not in Philly. He wasn't. He was in Philly in the early 80s.
Okay.
So he was let go by then.
Okay.
They had run through a bunch of terrible coaches. This is back when he was working towards getting back in the game with the guy that hired him was the GM at St. Louis.
Okay.
Was his defensive backs coach
Okay.
in Philly. That's how that whole thing.
Okay.
Peterman was his name, or Peterson.
Peterson. Yeah.
So anyway, one day, this guy walks in, and my mother, being Italian that she is, she recognizes him right off the bat, and it's Joe Paterno. And he comes over, and they're talking, and he looks at my mother's desk and goes, "Ostroski, do you have a son that's an offensive lineman?" And she says, "Well, yeah, yes, I do." And he says, "Yeah, we messed that one up." he said, "We thought that he was just a big kid, but here we didn't do our homework and realized he was a big kid that was really young, and he was just getting there." And so there that is, all the way back then, and how that whole thing works. And it's just like with Pennsylvania, you had so many Penn State fans and so many dudes loyal to Joe. And as you've learned over the years, being loyal to Joe has issues,
Right.
Unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, there were guys that they would hide guys. So and so would roll in, "Hey, I'm looking. We don't have anybody here. No, we're not. We don't have very many." And then that guy picks the paper up and finds out that so and so signs with Penn State. So back then it was real. Now you can't do that. I mean,
Well, no, you can't.
kids.
And the kids are their own best recruiters.
Right.
One, and I always point to that. But that's fascinating for a number of reasons, right? Not the least of which is coaches make mistakes all the time, or you'll say, "Hey, it's good because that kid ended up in a situation where he wouldn't have been." Like today, I remind people, De'Aaron King was going to play slot receiver or in return kicks at TCU. Right? Now he's transferring transferring to Miami. And, I think Gary would tell you he missed on that. He missed on Baker, probably like in private, but publicly he's like, no, they ended up where they're supposed to be. They're both outstanding players.
Right.
But how does that hit you now? Like, I'm not going to ask you if you want to go to Penn State because I knew that you grew up there, but
Right.
if it goes the way that it goes, I mean, you're an All-American at TU. Do you think maybe that's because the competition was such at TU as opposed to Penn State?
No, I think I'd have done well anywhere. I think that
I walked into that.
I think that what it shows is that the most important part of a kid playing college football, to me anyway, is the fit. You can't force fit. And I know that there are hundreds of thousands of kids in the country that want to play for a specific school. Some of them can. You have to remember there's about 25 spots a year for that place. And nowadays, with it being coast to coast, and from the border of Canada, well, heck, even into Canada now, Cuba and everybody else, all the way down to Mexico. Guys, 25 spots.
No.
Think about that.
And you bring up a good point because you talk about 22 players in the NFL today come from Oklahoma, 22 internationally.
Right.
Also, but in there, right, talk about fit and talk about 25 spots. I remind people what the numbers are because I think it really helps.
Right.
1 million kids played high school football last year. 1 million.
Yep.
11,000 and change get to play FBS on a scholarship. Right. Just 234 get drafted into the NFL each year.
Right.
And then 1696 in any given year make a 53-man roster, 2%. Right, of what you call the top 2% that you're drafting in, but in and out, in and out, in and out, and 25 of those kiddos. Like for instance, I heard from I had Shane Witter's dad reach out to me after Shane had decided to come to Oklahoma, right? And one of the things I love most about parents is they will fill you in on the details, right? One, I've never met a parent who would tell me that I didn't get a good one, right? Me being like I'm on the team,
right?
But also, two, no, this 446 is laser. Right? There's video of this squat in the hole. I mean, all of these things, and I have to remind people that don't have these children or don't have the opportunity to just go watch the kid grow up and play that's a 1%er. Like that kid isn't just walking around and Oklahoma happened to find him in North Carolina. No, people in North Carolina have known about that kid for years, since he was like 6 years old. So the idea that he's ranked 177th in the top 247, right? Or 196, wherever it might be. And you have to go, yeah, but they stop at 250 or they stop at 200.
Right.
But there's a million kids that played last year. He's in the top 200.
Right.
And it doesn't mean so much because we're only talking about blue chippers or whatever.
Everybody has that kid that they grew up in their neighborhood that you just know. From the time he's a little dude walking around, you're like, that dude's got it. But that's to me why... And it also has kind of moved that way, RJ, because of my older boy. He's playing 1AA football. And we always laugh about it. That's our inside joke about, 1AA Jerry.
Right.
But I respect that level of football so much because those are the guys that maybe are 2 inches shorter or maybe are 20 pounds lighter or maybe, they all have this little maybe, but they're still really good football players. And they end up playing really well. I mean, it was a really cool story I saw the other day. They had pass rush at the Senior Bowl, and it was like the second or third rated left tackle right now in the draft is taking a pass rush rep against a Division III player, and the Division III dude whipped him. And it's like, I love football because there is a job for everyone, no matter what your ability is, if you're willing to work and put the time in. And two, I love the fact that it doesn't matter where you go. The best players, they always end up getting rewarded for the most part. Their abilities come through no matter where they are. So you asked me that question. No, I think if I went to Penn State, I started there too. Would I have started as a true freshman? Probably not. That was back in the day when people loved a red shirt. They wanted the guys, unlike nowadays where they want more of the finished product. Back then it was, give me the guy that projects. Because you were going to play him for 2 years and then he'd go out the door. And, the three coming out in 3 was a very rare, very, very rare thing.
Yeah, I need to unpack that at some point because you're right. It's a recent phenomenon.
Yeah, incredibly rare.
I asked that question, right, because I'm trying to set up to the idea of an offensive lineman as an All-American is one that we take for granted, I think, as normal football fans. People that don't actually they want to understand what they're watching. They just don't know what verbiage to put to it a lot of times. For instance, I'm always trying to bring it back to something contemporary, and particularly to OU, because I think people understand. Andrew Rame is a talent, right? I mean, just an athletic specimen.
Right.
And it's difficult to make people understand that sometimes because he's a big kid, right? He's not chiseled. He's not got blazing speed, but he's legging out triples, and he is doing things with his hands on the offensive line that people that know what they're looking at, like, that's not how that usually is supposed to go. You don't block down the 3 technique and then go find the 5 with the other hand and block them both out of the play. The comp that people wanted to give him, and I think it's unfair, is Quentin Nelson, but that's because he's just that athletic, right? And the reason I'm bringing it up is because we'll do this thing with rankings. Positional value is important. Fit is positional value. We rank quarterbacks higher because they're quarterbacks. We rank wide receivers lower because it's a dependent position, right? An offensive guard and interior lineman doesn't usually get drafted in the first round. The ones that do are freaking Quentin Nelson.
Right.
You know, everybody agrees that that guy in any given year is probably the best player in the draft, and it takes that. So knowing all of that and knowing how many different positions that you played on the offensive line at any given time, right? How do you know you're going to succeed? And how do you know the fit is the fit if they're just going to keep moving you around?
It's a good question. The fit part, you don't go into this thing, like I didn't go into it in the league thinking they were going to move me all over the place. That was kind of